But Brandon, let's move on into the meat and potatoes of our podcast. I'll be honest, the actual podcast before I came in today and was like, hey, Brandon, do you mind if we throw a little college basketball at the start? And you're like, oh, no problem, Ricky. We could talk about some college basketball. Now we're going to get into what we were really going to get into today. Also, I will throw this out there. I don't know if this is coming across on camera because we are a little farther away. But it's really hot in the MVP studios today. It's like the way I am describing it, to be very frank about it, is it's balls hot in this room. So if you see Brandon and I sweating, that is why. And I know I need a haircut, and the sweat is getting to my hair. But Brandon, how we do the big board is we cut it up into 3. The first segment we're going to look at is 16 through 25. Before we talk about what we're going to talk about, we give each of ours. I will start with you. Start with number 25 and give us 25 through 16.
All right, at number 25 for me, I've got A.J. Brown, the wide receiver out of Ole Miss. At 24, I've got Andre Dillard, the defensive tackle from Washington State. At 23, Josh Jacobs, running back, Alabama. At 22, Brian Burns, the outside linebacker D-end for Florida State. At 21, Cody Ford, the offensive guard for Oklahoma. At 20, Ed Oliver, defensive tackle for Houston. 19, DeAndre Baker, cornerback, Georgia. At 18, Christian Wilkins, defensive tackle, Clemson. At 17, DK Metcalf, the wide receiver from Ole Miss. And at 16, Marquise Brown, wide receiver, Oklahoma.
Well, starting off with mine at number 25, Justice Hill, the running back from Oklahoma State, had a really good combine, cracks my top 25 for the first time. Then at number 24, Byron Murphy, the cornerback from Washington and the Huskies. Then at number 23, Brian Burns, the pass rusher from Florida State and the Seminoles. Number 22, Noah Fant, the tight end from the Iowa Hawkeyes. Number 21, Dexter Lawrence, the defensive tackle out of Clemson. Then at number 20, Andre Dillard, the offensive tackle from the Washington State Cougars. Then at 19, Josh Jacobs, the running back from the Alabama Crimson Tide. Then 18, Ed Oliver, defensive tackle out of Houston. Number 17, Marquise Hollywood Brown, the wide receiver from the Oklahoma Sooners. And then rounding everything out at 16, Clelin Ferrell, the defensive end from the Clemson Tigers. And Brandon, for this chunk, there were 2 things that we were going to hit for this chunk of teams. Number 1 is running backs. Number 2 is Ed Oliver. Let's jump into the running backs. I know Mark and I, on the onside kick immediately following the combine, we're talking about winners and losers. And let's be honest, the running backs were, if I could put them as a collective whole, most of them would go in the loser category from the combine. Were really the only 2 to stick out in my mind are obviously the 2 on my big board. Josh Jacobs, although he was limited at the combine, did do interviews, met with teams like the Eagles, but he also did the bench press, and I believe had 16 reps. I'll have to look at those numbers for him. But then Justice Hill had a great combine, shot up draft boards, had a great 40 time for the running backs. And one guy who did not have a good combine, who is on neither of our big boards, who I know you were a big fan of on previous big boards, was David Montgomery out of Iowa State. What is your kind of mindset with the running back position now, following the combine, knowing that most of these guys didn't really, no one really stood out as bam, this is the guy that needs to be past the top 15 or in the top 15 of draft boards?
Well, I know that a lot of people are going to look at the combine and they're going to use that as their scoring board for everybody and who's going to be really good. And I don't think that we can necessarily do that for everybody. And that's why I want to say that I don't think David Montgomery, while he's not in either of our boards, I don't think that he is a bad running back or will be bad in the NFL by any means. But we never said that he was a speedster. We never said that he was going to just shoot past people and be gone. He's a little shifty. He's not extremely fast. He's quick, but he's not fast. There's good things to his game. There's good pieces to his game, everything like that. So I still do like him. But I think a guy who's really, and this is even before Justice Hill rose from his combine performance, it's Josh Jacobs. And it's the running back from Alabama that I think people are more surprised to see up towards the top. And for a lot of people, he is the number one running back. And I think that's also because, well, no, he didn't get the majority of the work when at Alabama, but whenever he was called upon, he made big plays. He made plays happen. He scored a lot, 11 touchdowns on the ground just last year. And another great thing that NFL owners, GMs, coaches will be able to look at with Josh Jacobs is that he's not coming into the NFL with a ton of mileage on him from college. He's pretty fresh still. He's not a guy who they went to 20, 25 carries every single game. That's not him. So he's coming into the NFL, fresh legs, feeling good, ready to go, and ready to maybe be a 20 to 25 carry guy, who I think he could be. And he's that type of running back who he's not going to be your power back up the middle like a Mark Ingram. He's going to be your shifty speedster back that Alvin Kamara is on that team. Not Alvin Kamara, but he'll show more skill sets towards an Alvin Kamara than a Mark Ingram. To just give an example, but he's good. He's shifty. He's great. I think that you can use him in the passing game as well. He had 3 touchdowns, receiving touchdowns this past year for the Crimson Tide. He's a guy that NFL teams, I think, will look at and say, this guy may not end up being a NFL superstar. He's not going to be an NFL Saquon Barkley, but not many people ever will be. But he's somebody who I think could be, and maybe this is way off point, but maybe more of a Christian McCaffrey type. A guy who he's going to catch a lot of passes. He's going to be used a lot in the passing game, and he's going to be shifty when he's running and definitely difficult for tacklers to take down. Again, I know I always hate doing those comparisons because then people will roast you and grill you, and then it's like, well, But look at how they were when they were in college, though, too, not even just NFL. I think that Josh Jacobs is one of the most interesting running backs to look at. I also think he's one of the most talented in this class.
See, the thing for me is I want to touch David Montgomery first because he was the guy I think had coming into the combine, he had the most to gain because he was the one that everyone was. He had the NFL comparisons to Kareem Hunt. People are like, if he comes out, has a great combine, he could solidify himself as a day one guy and could be drafted in that first round. Has the combine that he does, showed poor explosiveness, poor speed. The height and the measurements weren't exactly there to what we expected, to where now many people are like, all right, he's a day 2 back. And the thing I think with most of the running backs that had bad days, because he's not the only one. Singletary was another one. Elijah Holyfield was one of the ones that didn't have that great of a day. There were a ton of running backs that just didn't have a good day at the combine. That doesn't solidify to me what they're going to be like at the next level. Obviously, teams are going to do their scouting, and teams are going to look at these guys and kind of basically, I know it's a bad way to put this, but they're like prize-winning like horses, to where it's like, hey, I am betting my money on you to pay off for my team. I'm going to poke, prod, dissect your film. Even if I'm not taking you in the first round, there might be a way that I take you in the second or even third round. And I know that third round would be low, but it's technically still day 2. The guy that I think gained the most out of the combine, and it's going to be interesting how everything moves forward, because like the combine is one. I know you and I will have one more NFL big board after this in the month of April, but it's the guy I have at 25, Justice Hill, because I have a unique stat for you, Brandon, that I want to throw out there. Did you know that only 2 running backs since 2003 have posted a 4.40 or faster at the combine and have had a vertical jump of 40-plus inches? One of them is Justice Hill. He did that this past year. Do you know who the other one was? Because he's really good and was taken really high in last year's draft. Saquon Barkley. Justice Hill and Saquon Barkley, only 2 backs to have a 4.40 or faster and a 40-plus on the vertical at the combine. And I know what people are going to say, wow, they're really good at running and jumping in their underwear. But to me, that says something about Justice Hill, of where Saquon had the film in college. He had the, dare I say it, hype with how well the Penn State Nittany Lions were. Oklahoma State, they weren't bad, but they weren't on the same level as Saquon's Penn State Nittany Lions. Like, Oklahoma State was not competing for national championship and college football playoff. They were just trying to prove Brandon wrong each and every week in picks, depending on which way Brandon picked one of their games. But to me, that is interesting, where you look at their height and weight. I mean, Justice Hill is about a few fractions of an inch shorter than Saquon is. And of course, he's a lot thinner. Like, Saquon's 233, Justice Hill's 194. But to me, that says something, to where if he's got this raw speed and can have the same type of athletic ability as a Saquon Barkley, he might be a guy that you think about if, let's say, you need a running back, and let's say a team like the Ravens, who Todd McShay had take Josh Jacobs in his mock draft first round. Then if you need a running back and Josh Jacobs is already taken, Justice Hill could be a guy you look at and go, hey, you know what? We can take him because he has similar skills and a similar athletic set to maybe a Saquon Barkley, who was a top 5 pick a year ago.
I think Justice Hill, one thing that I always just remember from him in his time at Oklahoma State is the guy is a home run hitter. Mm-hmm. I mean, he gets outside and he can be gone like that.
Was
I mean,
Saquon almost not the same at Penn State? I mean,
yes,
he had some pretty, like, but Saquon's home runs were like magnified, like we knew him and they were on SportsCenter the next day. Yeah, well, that night basically.
His team was also pretty good,
very good.
So you know, it was it's different for Oklahoma State, obviously, but Justice Hill is a very good player, and he is an exciting running back, and that's why teams are always going to lick their chops in the sense of that they could get that, especially teams that are not good, or especially teams that are looking for an offensive weapon, a guy that needs a home run hitter, quite honestly. And they could use him in the running game, in the passing game. You know, he's a guy who can get very involved with the offense very quickly, and anytime he touches the ball, he could go.
Let's move on. Is there, first, before we do, is there anything with the running backs we didn't touch that you think we need to?
I don't think so. I think we touched the main ones.
Let's move on to a guy who, to me, is very interesting, because he's a guy that way early in the draft season, I had mentioned to Mark of, I wonder who the faller is going to be. Because every year there's 2 types of fallers when it comes to the NFL draft. There's the first type, which is they start out top 5 prospect on the first big board. Then they kind of creep into top 10. Then they kind of creep lower into top 15. And then maybe creep as low as where Ed Oliver is, where, oh, wow, you're in now 16 to 25 range, when this was a guy who I believe both of us on the 1.0.
We had him up.
Yeah, we both had him at, so we both had him at 2. Then on the 2.0, I had him at 5, you had him at 3, still top 5 prospect. Then on the 3.0, he dropped to 7 for me, and he was still a top 5 for you. And now the combine happens. He is now in this range of he is 20 for you, 18 for me. When it comes to you, what are your thoughts on Ed Oliver? Because I know many people from the combine, and Mark had actually been spot on with this, and Mark has always questioned this, is when Mark and I would talk about it on the onside kick, Mark would always say, all right, with his size, is he going to play on the line? Is he going to be a linebacker? Because Mark would always say he might be too small to play in the middle of the line. He might be a guy that you just put in your linebacking core. But Ed Oliver believes he's a guy that can do the same, if not better. A recent quote from him, I can do the same as Aaron Donald in the NFL, if not better. What are you thinking about Ed Oliver, who was top 5 when we started this, and now has creeped down to 16 through 25?
Well, again, I think that, part of it is his size. That is one of those things that you look at and you think, okay, he does have the skill set. He does have the ability. Size in this position is different than size at the quarterback position, in my opinion, because the quarterback position isn't going up against anybody. They're not they're not digging their heels in against somebody else, trying to make tackles, all that type of stuff. It's different. Whereas Ed Oliver is trying to do, well, exactly that. So size is an issue. He missed some games last year with a knee injury. Is he holding up again? Is he going to hold up against that? Are injuries going to be a concern? But I do love his penetration to the ball. A good ball hawk. Someone who I think that you look at and you think, okay, he's got great power and good speed, but it's that size that you question, where's he going to fit in and what scheme is he going to be? Is he going to be best at the 4-3? Is he going to be best at a 3-4? That's all the type of thing as well is where he's going to fit best type of thing. And that's, I think, why he's dropped partially, but also partially because we're seeing so many other really good performances from some of these other guys in front of him.
Yeah, and I mean, the whole big thing for me is you got to think these are guys that we're going to talk about and say their names later on, so I'm not spoiling where they are, but obviously their name's not called. You're assuming they're going to be later, but there's guys like Drew Lock that's rising on draft boards. There's guys like DJ Metcalf that's rising on draft boards. How Montez Sweat, after the combine, everybody and their grandmother who is a defensive, if you gush over defensive players, you were sitting there going, oh my God, can you see what Montez Sweat is doing, especially after his 40. His 40 time, people are like, what just happened here for Montez Sweat? So, of course, there's a lot of, guys rise, and obviously if you rise above you, you're going to knock you down. But, Ed Oliver to me, yes, he's the same. He's similar size to Aaron Donald, who he compared himself to. And in the NFL article that I'm looking at, in NFL analyst Lance Zierlein said this: I had heard that Oliver had his weight up, so I thought 287 pounds was good. He was actually an inch taller than I expected, and his arm length is exactly what I expected. He will crush all the drills at the combine, which is going to create new momentum for him. And I mean, with me, it all depends on, with Ed Oliver, like you said, what scheme does he fit into and what team does he fit to? Because I don't think, he's very different. If you're looking defensive tackle, Quinnen Williams is the clear number 1 out of the entire defensive tackles. But then after that, you got Christian Wilkins, who is really good. You've got Dexter Lawrence. If he didn't have that pop for steroid issue right before the playoffs, he probably would have been higher on draft boards. I mean, Ed Oliver isn't bad, but it's where is he going to be valued with NFL teams? Plus, what kind of positions are team's going to value? Pass rusher, offensive tackle? Which ones are going to go for quarterbacks, linebackers? So it's kind of a mix-up, especially since this draft is very heavy on all of the defensive prospects. Do you have anything that we didn't touch with Ed Oliver that you think we need to?
I don't think so.
Well, this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you guys think down below in that comment section. The first thing I want to ask is, do you think we're dead wrong on Ed Oliver? Because I feel like he's going to be one that people are going to be polarized, where some people are going to be like, no, you're crazy. He's a top 15, top 10 guy. There'll be other people out there that'll say, no, you guys are right on. I don't really know how he's going to fit in with different teams, and if he could be like that Aaron Donald at the next level for the NFL. Let us also know what you guys think about the running backs. Who's your favorite? What are you looking at from the running backs? Who do you hope gets put on a great team or a good team, a good fit? Let us know what you guys think down below.